So yes, we're privileged to hear today from 4 experts and survivors who are going to give us the gift of sharing their stories and the lessons for how we can better move this work forward and better support survivors of violence who are being criminalized, but also better intervene in the processes of criminalization and prevent it from happening in the first place. Thank you. So our first speaker today probably needs no introduction. Marissa Alexander's story of being denied the right to assert self-defense after defending herself against her abusive husband's attack and death threats, and instead being prosecuted for aggravated assault and sentenced to 20 years in prison for standing her ground, was for many of us an introduction to the criminalization of survivors of violence, but also to the struggle to free survivors. And as you heard earlier, also Cheryl Baldwin was also prosecuted and subsequently acquitted for defending herself against her abusive husband, and we're really grateful to you for stepping in literally at the last minute and to join us. And Nan-Hui's experience of criminalization and prosecution, immigration detention after fleeing her abusive husband with her daughter is really a stark illustration of the ways that the criminal legal system and the immigration system intersect to punish survivors of violence and to tear families apart. So thank you for joining us. Even though she's not here, I would encourage folks to Google and learn more about Isha Love's story. It's really illustrative of the fact that the Black trans women who survived the epidemic of violence that is killing Black trans women are then very much punished for doing so. And so instead of, if you don't become one of the names that are read every year at the Trans Day of Remembrance, then you are very much punished and criminalized for having survived and fiercely asserted your right to be alive in the face of a society that is set up to kill you. So I really encourage folks to look up her story and to check out hashtags like Black Trans Women's Lives Matter and others. And last but not least, when we think of criminalization of survivors, we often think of criminalization of survivors of domestic violence, of sexual assault, or hate crimes. But we also need to think of criminalization of people in the sex trades who are targeted for and survive all 3 of those forms of violence, as well as horophobic violence. And so we're super privileged to hear today from Bella Robinson, who's a longstanding advocate for sex workers' rights in Rhode Island, where for a long time sex work, they had forgotten they had decriminalized it, and then they recriminalized it indoors anyway. So without further ado, I'm wondering if we could start with each of you sharing as much of your story as you're comfortable sharing of being criminalized for survival.
As earlier mentioned, I'm Marissa Alexander, and my story started back in 2010, I suppose. So essentially I was pregnant and had just delivered a baby girl who was premature, and a lot of that had to do with the stress and the relationship, that domestic violence relationship I was in at the time, and I ended up delivering her early. So about 8 days after having her, my then husband attacked me, and when I tried to escape that in my home, he threatened me, and so that particular day I did what I thought I could do, which was defend myself. Fortunately for him, he's still alive, but I ended up being arrested and prosecuted, and a lot transpired in between that time, and then I did do a stand your ground here, which during that time I had no idea about. I was trained in the Catholic doctrine. I had a restraining order for no violence at that time, concealed weapons permit, never been arrested, never been in any trouble. I actually was probably going into my 10th year with a pretty major company as a manager at that time, and I had 2 other children who were getting ready to be 10, I think, at that time. So essentially I was prosecuted, and the story goes that I shot at children, which that was a huge concern for me because I cared for them. They were my stepsons, and I did not, and they were not present. And I think it was much easier to sell the angry Black woman story as opposed to the truth, and that bothered me. So on principle, at some point, I think about the week right before we were supposed to go to trial, because the judge took a while to make a decision in the stand your ground hearing, because I think at some point she became very uncomfortable with the facts of the case, was hoping that the state would move to resolve it. At that time, Angela Corey, the prosecutor, the state attorney, was not budging off of the 20-year 10/20 life in Florida, and it's an enhancement. And they have the discretion on whether or not they can apply it to your case or not, and that was her discretion to enhance my charge. She could have easily waived it, which is what the judge at the time was hoping she would do, so that she could have discretion to sentence me, but she chose not to. After many pleas from other people, I even met with Angela Corey in her office, me and my then attorney, and she still was not willing to do it. So moving forward, the judge, I believe at that time, was uncomfortable with making a decision because it was around the time around Trayvon Martin's case. And so it was a hot topic in Florida, the stand your ground. And her husband was also the undersheriff at that time as well. All this is in my book. I'm giving y'all tidbits. And so all these political things going around, it's a real political, but at the time it's your life. You know what I mean? It's kind of like people playing politics with your life, and it's a really uncomfortable position. So, I always knew it was bigger than me. I just didn't know it was going to look like this, right? So, anyway, she denied it. Angela Corey, I met with her. She still wouldn't remove it. And so about a week prior to trial, one of my stepsons came forward and, changed her story to what actually was more the truth. And so at that time, they offered me a plea, which is essentially the same plea I ended up taking. However, the difference was she was going to charge me for aggravated assault against my two stepkids, and on principle, I couldn't do it. I didn't shoot the kids. I didn't do it, and I wasn't going to take that. And so we went forward to trial. So, and how that story ends, 12 minutes, 6 jurors. I think they went in, washed their hands, used the bathroom, and came out. And then I was convicted and was sentenced to 20 years. Day for day, minimum mandatory, by the way. So at that point, I pretty much, guided by the Holy Spirit, just wrote a letter. And I told my family to get it out. And at that time, I think this is when the case with the Jamie Lynn Scott sisters, I think in Mississippi, and that movement had went on. In essence, they did an article on it. And so everybody in there who did something, which is a lot like you all, I contacted them, their names, and I sent them my story. And a particular lady, I can't remember her name right now, picked it up, and from there, here you are. So the legal battle was probably just as bad as the actual relationship itself, because there was things that went on that were unbelievable. The people and the powers that be that use them and abuse them were unbelievable. And so thank God for, Free Marissa Now campaign and the people in Jacksonville that kind of got things started, Kareem Brown, and then as well as other people across the nation, and my attorneys at the time that came in and just was like, this is unbelievably wrong. Faith Gay, I call Papa Bruce Semet, Holiday Night Buddy, and a couple other, and Faith is from Quinn Emanuel and Urquhart. But they came in and took my case on. So navigating that was like a minefield even for them, So through all of that, I went to prison. I was in jail, went to prison, came back, was going to do a bond, but they didn't let me do a bond, so I stayed about 8 months back in county, went back to prison, and then my case was overturned. And I remember being at a point where I was like, this is getting really rough. And I was like, all right, God, you want to do something? Because I need a ram in the bush. And literally the next day, an officer called me in to say, hey, she showed me on the screen that it had been reversed. So, at that point, it was just a matter of time getting back to Jacksonville and seeing if they were going to actually give me a bond. The judge I had at that time really, really did not like the media. It was really uncomfortable for him. And I did end up getting that bond right prior to Thanksgiving, day before Thanksgiving. I will tell you from my experience, that time awaiting trial was probably, this is where my tattoo comes from. I tell people all the time, I put my pain on my arm. It was a very difficult time for me, and so I was fortunate enough to have some pretty good tattoo artists that came to my house to do it for me. because the alternative was not a good one. And physically it was affecting my health and just trying to get to the place where the case was resolved. So I think you've probably heard of a term cutting. This is essentially that form of it, but it's just a little bit artistic. And so this is me. This is now a canvas of my survival is what I say it is. So, here I am today. I've kind of started my own nonprofit, and I did. And it's very small and very young. And it's evolved around DVSA, but mostly domestic violence and just social justice issues because I've seen all of those and how they fit together. What I feel now is that it's been a very strategic system put together from a long time ago to get us to this point, so we're going to have to be very strategic as we move out of it. And that's just kind of, my position on it. So I'll pass the mic because I'm done with that.
Okay. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Once again, I'm Cheryl Baldwin. My story goes back to, let's start in 2011. I was 19 at the time. I had met a guy on the internet. I wouldn't highly suggest it, but I met a guy on the internet, and at first it was lust. And we were messing around, dating. And I became pregnant. So once I became pregnant, I just figured I might have to stay with this guy. I knew it wasn't the right decision. I seen signs, but I tried to work it out because I was pregnant. So after a year, things became worse. We moved in together. And he just became controlling. He started taking my cell phone from me, kidnapping my son.
Somebody wanted to hear your voice more.
I'm sorry. Kidnapping my son, emptying my bank account, flattening my tires. I called the police. They came to the house a couple of times until they finally put a protective order, which 2013. I want to say they put a protective order in February. So bring you guys to May. May, things started escalating. We weren't no longer together. We didn't live together. I couldn't deal with the abuse no more. I had lost 2 jobs because of him. So I just couldn't do it. My son was 15 months at the time. We were kind of homeless. I didn't stay home much because I was very scared of this guy. So one day, on May 2013, after filing the restraining order, I hear a loud boom in the house. My door busts open. It's Jeffrey. He comes in there. He attacks me. Our son, I should say, is on the bed right next to me. Do you think he would care? No. He started attacking me, punching me, slapping me, grabbing me by my hair. Next thing you know, he has a belt on. He takes off his belt, hits me with it, ties it around my neck. I'm just scared. I just remember fighting him off. I didn't have no contact or glass. I wear contacts. I didn't have no contact or glasses on, so my vision is very blurry. I'm blind. All I remember is, where's my car keys? Running out the door, flying, leaving a 15-month-old behind. Jeffrey's right behind me, belt still in his hand. Fly out the front door, jumped in the car, pulled the car into the driveway. Jeffrey's coming around with the belt. I stepped on the pedal, and I hit him with the car. The car went flying into a wall. All I remember is him on the top of the hood with the belt still in his hand. All I kept thinking about is I need to get back to my baby. But I had suffered so much from him to the days leading up to the incident. And it's only so much you can take. You call the police, they let him out of jail. He can post bond, they give him a pat on the back. 10 days before, on May 18th, 10 days before it happened, he pleaded guilty to another domestic violence case I had against him. 10 days prior. You think they would put him in jail? They let him out. And it's just like, you know, the system failed me. Restraining order and all. He sent me death threats all the time. DOA, DOA. And it's just the same, that morning he sent me death threats. I'm like, Jeffrey, just please leave me alone. That's all I ask him, please just leave me alone. You cleared out my bank account. You did everything. You totaled all my cars. It's just, why are you still bothering me? So then, I want to say, the police came, they took pictures in the hospital of my body bruised. They asked me questions. I just remember being sedated. They said I gave a statement. I honestly don't remember giving a statement in the hospital room. So then, I want to say a week later, they called back. They called me on my cell phone, asked to speak to me. At this time, I'm fully aware what's going on. I know I'm going to get arrested. So, I want to say a month later, they asked me to turn myself in. So I knew I had to turn myself in. I knew at that time Jeffrey had passed away. I was already distraught about that. So I asked the police officer, what am I turning myself in for? He said, homicide. Your bond is $1 million. At that time, I had my son. My leg was broken. I was in a wheelchair. My leg was broken from the incident. So I'm like, I can't. Where's my son gonna go? They're like, you just have to turn yourself in. So I turned myself in. My son was crying. He was upset. But I knew I had to do it. At that time, I felt like giving up because I fought so hard for my son. So I want to say my first attorney, I got an attorney. My first attorney, that didn't go well. So then I ran into my mom got another attorney, Miles Garrity. And he told me, he said, this is a self-defense case. And I just wanted to protect me and my son. I didn't want to go through what I was going through anymore. You do everything you're supposed to. The system just fails you just because you're a female. And I'm a female of color at that. So my attorney told me that. He said, you're a female of color. They're not gonna treat you any different. So I went to trial in 2014. I lost my first trial. Well, I didn't lose my first trial. It was 11-1. 11 in my favor. But I just felt like giving up because I'm like, who wants to go back to trial again? So at that time, they offered me a plea deal because they knew that they knew that Jeffrey was wrong, but they wanted me to plead out. So I went back to trial March of 2016. And that's when I won my trial. I was acquitted of all charges. And I just couldn't believe it. And the prosecutor, she said it. She knew that the way Jeffrey treated me, she knew everything. But it's just the system. The system is totally against women. And you can't even protect yourself anymore. And I advise women if you can just move away or get away from the situation, just get away from it. You don't want to end up like how I ended up. If I can do things over, I would have moved out the country if I could. My son been through too much. He's only 6 years old. He's been through too much. And it's sad. Because you did everything, you took all the right steps. You called the police. You got away from that person. And it's just, what are you supposed to do? Just to keep allowing it to keep happening? They show up at your job. They get you fired from your job. You clear out your bank account. It's just, you don't have nothing left. So how do you survive? Then I started getting all these letters. My mom told me that I got some letters from people on the outside. And I'm like, who are these people? I'm saying, I'm so emotional. I'm always crying. So I'm sitting here on the phone crying. Who are these people sending me letters? And she's like, Holly and Stacy. She's naming people. And I'm like, who? She's like, they're from Chicago and California. And I'm like, and then I started getting the letters. And I'm like, who are these people writing me? And I'm like, these people don't care about me. And then, you know, you guys actually did care about me. And that's what kept me from committing suicide, because 3 years is a long time to be incarcerated and not be with your son. And he's back and forth between houses. And it's just, you know, if my mom didn't fight for me, I don't know where I would be right now. And you guys fighting for me, oh my God. I just think about it every day, because I'm like, you know, I seen the petition when I got out. And I'm like, really? There's people that actually seen my case? You know, you think people don't care about you, but people actually do care. People go through similar situations. And, you know, I hate that this happened. I hate that he's, you know, I don't want to say it like that, because I'm not a murderer. So when they use that term, I'm like, but somebody was trying to kill me. You're just protecting yourself. You know, somebody's whipping you with a belt in front of your kid. Like, I don't get it. And it's just like, you know, oh, well, you stepped on the pedal. That was why they prosecuted me, because I stepped on the pedal and I didn't brake. But somebody's on your hood with a belt in their hand, what are you supposed to do? Just sit there and allow them to keep attacking you? You have a 15-month-old child in the house that's crying, Mommy, my son is crying in the house for me. And you would think the father would have sympathy? No. And it's just, you know, it makes you scared of who you even date. You don't even know who you're really dating. Even though we was together 2 years after that, well, 2011, a year and a half or something like that. It's just like, who, you think you would learn that person by then. I still didn't know who he was. I still didn't know, and I had to find out the hard way. And I just know better now. My son is never gonna be anything like his father. And I'm gonna, you know, everybody's like, how are you gonna explain to your son your situation? Let him know what happened to his father. Well, if he would knew that his father was the one trying to hurt me, then I'm pretty sure my son will understand. If he knew what his father put me through, I'm pretty sure my son would not hate me and resent me. So, therefore, ladies, I just don't want you to go through the same thing I went through. It's sometimes not worth it. But you have to defend yourself as well. And I thank a lot of you ladies I know I'm talking forever, but I thank a lot of you ladies for supporting me. It's been a tough road. I only been home a year. And it felt like I was in outer space or something, because I come home, everything's different. So I just been through a lot, and I just feel like us women should stick together. And I'm trying to become more involved with domestic violence. Even though I'm working now, I'm getting back on my feet. Everything's coming to my senses now. But, you know, I'm going to be more involved with helping women that's incarcerated. Because I believe that there's always two sides to a story. The media always put out the negative part, but they never hear what actually went on behind closed doors, what that person went through during that time. All they put is, that person did this person shot, this person ran over. But what did the other person do before that? So, I'm done.
Hello everyone, I'm Nan-Hui. I came to America as a film student, it was 2002, and then I came to Sacramento and I met my daughter's father. We had a date and I got pregnant. He ran away from me because I got pregnant, but he wanna come back. So I'm Asian, especially Korean. If you have kid, we don't really wanna break up, because for a kid, no matter what the relationship. So a few days ago, my daughter asked me, Mom, why did you meet him? That was a good question. I mean, I didn't meet him. He taught me, because I was Asian, only Asian in the class, because we took a photography class at the same school. That's the reason. He was a veteran. Anyway, I was pregnant, and then he doesn't want a baby, and then he asked me to give her abortion. So I said, no, I'm gonna keep my baby, so don't care. You don't have to care about it, you don't have to worry that. Then we broke up, and then he wanted to come back. All right. And then I was after 6 months, so he and his family first suggest me to adopt away my daughter. It's like, what kind of country is this? Like is this American culture? Like, okay, leave me alone. I'm gonna give my daughter this birth, and then I will take her. So after that, I gave a birth by myself, and then one day I saw him at the campus. He followed me, and I saw his face is so regret. So I gave her one more chance. So we started to live together. It was like only we lived like 5 months. Then he got started like really violence. And same time, I'm an immigrant, so the green card was denied. That meaning is everything is denied at the same time. So working permit, driver's license, and my daughter was only like 1 year old. So I didn't have a choice, and my partner was getting violence. He choked my neck, saying the word, like it was scary, and I really scared with my daughter because my daughter was only 1. So I didn't have a choice. And I called to ICE, and I called the police twice too, and there's nothing happened. And I called to ICE, and then they told me I have to leave this country immediately because I lost my status. So I had to go back to my country where my family can take care of my daughter and me. So I went back to Korea. And then 5 years later, it was like 2014, I came back to Hawaii because my daughter is mixed, so I thought maybe Hawaii is better because there's a lot of mixed people. But at the airport, I was really sorry to my daughter, and really like, I don't know when I can forget this moment because it's so painful. Because when I got to the airport, they didn't let us out of the airport, so I could feel something happen. And my daughter was only 5, and she could feel something happen too. And they put us at some room for waiting. And then some people, like officer, came to me, and then she said that I have to separate with my daughter. So I said, why? And then she explained about. She just said, "Do you know Jesse Charlton?" That was my daughter's father's name. So like, wow, really? So they took my daughter away from me, and then they arrested me at there. So, and I didn't know that what happened, and I didn't know that how long I was going to be in jail for that time. And first of all, my family was waiting my phone call because I came to Hawaii, and my mom especially waiting. I got there safe way, but I couldn't call because I was in jail. And first my thing was like, where's my daughter? And how I let my family know I'm here, and then where I can call. Like, for 3 days, I don't know what they call that place. Like, it was not police station, it was not jail. Somewhere I stuck, and I didn't know what time, and I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what was my charge, nothing. And I have to figure it out, and then I just keep asking myself, how can I do? How can I do this? For 3 days, I keep asking, and then I begging to officer, please let me call. And then they say, where? You don't know any phone number here. I'm like, please let me call. I want to call to Korean embassy. So I called to Korean embassy, and then they visit me. So they called to my family, like that way. But the funny thing is, the prosecutor, they let me stay in Hawaii Correction Center for 1 month because they wanted saving time to collect evidence to charging me. So I was in Hawaii, and Hawaii Collection Center is like worse and horrible. And then they picked me after 1 month to Yolo County Jail. I was there, so I met my attorney that time, first time. And then it was a really weird thing, because like I'm Korean. I'm really proud, and I came to America because I thought many people say it's like opportunity country and freedom country. That's one of the reasons I came here. But the system, what I'm observing, that's so weird because when I met my trainer first time, what he said is, all right, do you want to stay in America or you want to go back to your country? And I say, I want to go back to my country with my daughter. And then he said, okay, here's the deal. Prosecutor dealt to me. That was after 3 months I got arrested. They said, he told me, prosecutor deal to me, if I agree my charge, they gonna let me see my daughter. What? Serious? They wanna deal with my daughter? How they can even think like that way? So I say, no, I can't. It's because that's not right. That's not right thing. So my charge was child abduction. First of all, I didn't know the word abduction, so I tried to find the dictionary. Child abduction. Who? My daughter? I kidnapped my daughter? Who I gave a birth by myself, raised by myself for 6 years, and even I didn't marry him. And at my daughter's birth certificate, there's only my name.
Wow.
And what? Really? How is it possible? And my family said, hey, tell the truth to police. They're gonna believe it. Mom, they think I'm criminal. They don't want to believe it. They want make me criminal. They want me to be in jail for a long time. So my trial started. But I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know who I can ask. Fortunately, I'm Korean. I'm so proud. The Korean community is so strong. So they heard my story and they tried to help me. They collected the money to get fundraising, and then they spread my story. So I met many good people, and many good people helped me. So the first trial was hung jury. They couldn't decide it's wrong or right. And then after first trial, I was an immigrant, and so I couldn't come out with bail. They said there is a flight risk. What kind of flight risk? My daughter is here. So after first trial, the other judge suggested me, hey, you're charging me as a felony, but I'm gonna reduce to misdemeanor. So let's finish here. Let's not get a second trial. I said, first time I thought I couldn't really understand English that much, so I thought oh, I can get out finally, so I can see my daughter thing. But seems it was not. The meaning is I'm guilty. I'm taking the misdemeanor and I'm guilty. So no. I stayed in jail already 6 months. So it's not just my story anymore. It's and many people 8,000 people signed for me. Many people believe me what I had done for my daughter, and then that was really thankful because that was a really big curiosity for myself. Did I really do something wrong? Really? Am I a really dangerous person in this society? It was a really big thing, so I keep thinking about it, the question. And then, no, I don't think I'm not that bad person, and I don't think I did something wrong. So if I agree that meaning is I was wrong, and that is making some example. So I thought my case is just not my case anymore, so I cannot take that deal. So that day, I cry a lot when I go back to jail, and then like, oh my God, I don't know how long I'm gonna take that trial again, like, and I don't know when I can see my daughter again, but I'm sure one day my daughter gonna understand me, and one day my daughter gonna proud about me. So I went back to jail and like a whole day, like in a bus. You know how it is thankful everything while we have it, like even sunshine, like in this small window of the bus, like wow, thanks so much God, this small sunshine. Like, many things changed after that. The second trial, I got guilty, so it was misdemeanor, but so my charge was less than 6 months, so I already time served, so I came out right away, but the ICE was waiting for me out of the jail. So right after I came out from jail, they picked me and tried to put me in the immigrant jail. But actually, I could feel they don't want me to put me in jail. They tried to kick me out of this country immediately because you know what? I could feel it. They didn't book me. They didn't give a uniform, the inmate uniform. They're like, what's going on? I was scared. And then they put me in the bus to go to the San Francisco immigrant. No. What is that? Like the board detention center, and then they got interviewed to me because they really plan to kick me out of this country. But think about it. We are human, right? And we are living in society. I think we have to care each other. If not, why we are living in society? If we don't want to care about people, we have to go to the mountain and live by yourself. Right? So, and the interviewer asked me, and I can feel it. Wow, they set up. They really tried to kick me out right away. What is the meaning? Think about it. That means I cannot see my daughter possibly forever. I really wanted to ask them, do you know what I'm doing now? Why do you want to make scene? Why they want to do that way? I still keep asking myself, I might be wrong. I don't know. Maybe not. But I'm sure we shouldn't do this way. We have to figure out the way how we can figure out, right? So I had a lot of attorney, fortunately, because all of you helped me to get a lot of good attorney. So they give advice. If there is a possibility, if I try to kick out of this country, say something. If so, they cannot put in the airplane. You know, just say something. I cannot say it, but so I say that. So that's right. Oh, all right. All right. So why are you laughing? You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so they cannot kick me out. So they put me in the immigrant jail again. So I stay there. But immigrant jail is so different with Yellow County jail. Yellow County jail was kind of luxury. The food is amazing, seriously. So like sometimes I'm thinking about, maybe I have to open the restaurant in front of Yellow County jail, so like jail food. So it's seriously really good. But the immigrant jail is horrible. I couldn't see the sun for 3 months. So like, it's unbelievable. But it was good because many people who support me, they send a lot of letters. So they thought I'm kind of like movie star. They asked me, like, are you a movie star? I said, no. So I got a lot of letters, seriously. So I'm really so thankful because sometimes, I'm human, so sometimes I'm getting weaker and then like, I'm thinking like, maybe I was wrong. That's why maybe God gave the punishment. Maybe, like, what did I do wrong? I keep thinking. But when I was weak, but most of the time, no, I don't think so. I don't think I did something wrong. So many people's letter helped me a lot to being strong. That was really, really important thing for me. And then especially one of organization worker became my best friend. And then when you're in jail, many things, I miss so many things like music and smell and flowers, guy, of course my daughter, but we don't have to count because that is, so that kind of thing is so important because most important thing is I'm not by myself. That's the most important thing. I didn't do wrong, and there is some people who have the same opinion with me. That's really important to me because even I'm not wrong, but nobody think like me. I shouldn't live in this society, right? I shouldn't belong to this society. So that's really important. If somebody thinks same thing like me, that's really important thing. So people send a letter and keep working for me is made me, okay, there is still hope. I shouldn't give up this society. Thanks God. That's why I think I'm in jail. Maybe I have some other special job for that. So I was in jail, the immigrant detention center for 3 months, unfortunately. And then the judge, thanks so much, that judge just released me without hearing. That was really dramatic moment, but there's enemy, they don't like that. So they keep trying to hearing, okay, you wanna fight? Okay, let's fight. So I keep fighting. Still, everything's pending, my immigration case, my criminal case, my family court thing, still pending. But you know what is the funny thing? I gave a birth by myself, but I never had 100% custody. The guy, the A guy, he had 100% custody, and then he took my daughter and then raised my daughter. Actually, he didn't really raise. He just lived with her. She is so amazing. So he kept lying to her still now. So what he lied to my daughter, he said he write the letter to judge. That's why the judge released me. What? Really? So oh my God, I cannot just quiet. I didn't tell anything to my daughter because she's now 8 years old. I didn't want to explain, but I think I have to explain, even though it's gonna possible. But if I say something true, and if my daughter is young, so if she's explained to her father called to his attorney, and it's gonna really affect my family court thing. First of all, I have to get my custody, so because I cannot let my daughter live with him. So, but he liked that. It's I don't know. I still thinking what kind of country is it? How is possible working like this? And then I'm sorry. It's because I was in jail just only 1 year. Just only 1 year. So, I feel a little bit sorry because compared with other people, I'm nothing. So, but
It's still a long time.
It's a long time, and it's definitely the system
yeah, because
acting as a second or additional abuser, right? And that's what I'm hearing from.
So
Yeah.
anyway, he is my story.
Thank you so much.
My story's a little different. I have to admit that I was one of the lucky ones when it came to actual physical violence. I grew up on the south side of St. Petersburg, Florida, in the foster care system. And they allowed me to marry a 41-year-old man when I was 17. Somehow they thought that was a good idea. Of course I did because I was 17, but he raised his hand at me and something in me snapped and I left. And I knew next time he was gonna hit me, and I knew I'd rather go live in my car than put up with that. And when I think back at how lucky I was that I made that decision right then, And I'd rather go engage in survival sex work and be a street-based worker than kiss any man's ass and put myself at risk. Unfortunately, society punishes you greatly for that. I was arrested within 2 weeks of my 18th birthday being charged with prostitution. And I'm gonna skip over a lot of the prison stuff. So I got addicted to crack cocaine for years, in and out of jail. But I never stole anything, I never did anything violent. It was just all drugs and being a hoe. And when you're in prison and jail, if they know you have prostitution convictions, you're targeted to be raped by correctional officers. It's not violent, it's kind of like a threat. You're gonna go to the hole if you don't do this, and you don't tell, because if you tell, you're punished. So, needless to say, that all sucks. I went to prison twice, 3 years, 5 years. The second time, my daughter was 4 when I went away. She was almost 9 when I came home. So, skipping on to that, I stayed clean for several years and relapsed, and I'm in the Florida jail, and they're talking about sending me to prison for 3 years for possession charge. And I knew if I didn't leave Florida, I was gonna be dead or back in prison. And I gave up a house to go. I fled. I ended up in Jersey, and at that point, I have no ID, I can't drive, no bank account. And I was working with another woman. We were 44 years old. I had a rental house, we had a Craigslist ad, and they sent in a SWAT team with guns without a warrant. Now, all the shit that I really did with the drugs when I was young, never made the newspaper, never saw a SWAT team, but I felt like a terrorist, and they were coming in with guns. They sentenced me to 6 months in jail, and they made me pay a $3,720 fine, even though I told them I was a single mom with a 17-year-old kid who had lost a house. So the state of New Jersey exploited me. And you know what? We should all be glad they did, because you know what? There's nothing more dangerous than a pissed off hoe. And let me tell you, so I get out of jail, and one of my clients tells me it's decriminalized in Rhode Island, and I feel really stupid that I didn't know this. And I pack my bags, and I go to Rhode Island, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. You threaten me, I call the cops on you. It was almost like I could imagine being out in the West when the women followed the guys out in the gold trade back in the day. And then they took it away 6 months later, and they criminalized us. And it actually happened over the Craigslist killer. He killed the girl in Boston. He came to Rhode Island and robbed a girl, and because she was decriminalized, she dialed 911 and reported it, and they caught him before he hurt anyone else. But the state's response was to frame it as, we're all victims, we gotta save you. There was 30 spa workers that went up to Federal Hill and begged not to be criminalized. So since then, I'm going to move into what action I've taken since then, because organizing was hard. There's not a lot of organizations and people that want anything to do with sex workers if you won't say you're a victim, and oh, it was just horrible. And I have to admit this, during my addiction, while I was on the street smoking crack and turning tricks, no one made me do that. I don't get to blame other people for my poor decisions of the past. Luckily, I've learned to make better decisions, and I have a better life. I believe most real trafficking is a form of domestic violence, because when a man can say, I'm going to call the cops and tell them you're a hoe and you're going to get evicted and they're going to take your kids, he's got a lot of power over you. But I'm really fortunate that, I wasn't a victim of extreme violence, and as a white, middle-aged white woman, I have a certain privilege that I now use for my community. So I relaunched the Rhode Island chapter at Coyote in 2010. I'm on the board of 3 different NGOs. I don't get paid for any of them. Because I'm a sex worker and I can work 3 or 4 hours a week, I'm able to give my community 40 or 50 hours of my time every week for free. I present at 7 New England universities, teaching trafficking in the industrial complex. I barely finished, got my GED. I never even went to high school, just out of 8th grade, and I'm teaching grad students. I undertook a research project and interviewed 62 Rhode Island sex workers. 24% had been robbed, raped, or assaulted by police officers. 24% had been to grad school, and only 1 didn't have a GED. So we see it's a very diverse community, and there's a lot of different levels of empowerment. So then I joined up with SBLRP. We crowdfunded $30,000 to file a constitutional challenge. 99% of every dollar raised went directly to the lawyers. I don't think any other NGO in the world can say their operating cost is 1%. But my most passion is SWAT behind bars. When we put flyers up and say, click on the link and send this girl a book, we're not asking for nothing, and people get that. I've tried to network with trafficking NGOs. I volunteered at a domestic violence shelter for a year. Then they got a grant to open a human trafficking shelter and didn't want anything to do with sex workers. And all they did was rent an apartment, put 4 beds in it, and they got paid $200,000. But I'm turning tricks to pay for my shit. The next step is I tried to do the labor thing. I went to some of the UALB women's union conferences, and they were polite, but they really weren't passionate. But to have 100 women that can at least be polite to you when you're a sex worker is a big positive. But then I caught the bug and I found my local clan, the social justice movement. And I'm proud to say I've teamed up with FANG, Refugee Dream Center, PRISM, Providence Youth Group, DARE. Providence Youth Group, we were the first city that just passed a Community Safety Act in the country that holds police accountable for racial profiling. And if they pull you over, they need to file a report why they pulled you over. It stops them from putting kids in the gang database just because you're smoking weed with someone that's a gang member. And these kids fought for this for 4 years. So I was really thrilled that they took me under their wing. And then we had this local NGO called Project Renew that it's so traumatic to hear their lies. They stood up and say, we've helped 300 women in 10 years, and they're all on drugs. And I thought, how dare you break their confidentiality? What is wrong with you? So I wrote to the Elton John Foundation, and I had their grant pulled. Okay? And they called to try to have sex workers kicked out of our venue on December 17th for International Day to End Violence Against Sex Work. So there's two sides of the fence. We know there are no services for anyone, and I don't think services should just be for sex workers. Services should be for everyone who's poor. And the only reason I'm not poor is because I do sex work. And when you want to rescue me and dump me in a shelter and leave me to live here in poverty, I'm like, no thank you, please don't rescue me. We've got a lot more work to do, but I really think the social justice organizing are the groups that are going to start supporting sex worker rights, LGBT rights, trans women's rights. And I'm just really grateful to be here and tell my story. 5 years in jail really sucks. Never did anything violent. I can never own a gun. I was recently denied a passport so I couldn't travel to Thailand with brown students who had been studying the rescue industry in Thailand. And of course the government kept my $135 application fee, but I'm not allowed to leave the country because of my home. Never did anything violent. Still get an active Florida warrant that they're trying to resolve, that I got to play the victim part. And they actually wanted documentation. Do you have police reports or something from the prosecutor saying that you're a victim? It's like, no, they don't ask you if you're a victim. They're the ones. And I also take on supporting officer-involved domestic violence. Because think about this. Could you imagine if he was a cop? How scared would you have been then? Not trying to discount the abuse, but they beat their wives at double the rate any other professional, and there's a huge increase. There's thousands of them that have sexually assaulted children, and they get probation. But you know, you give a 17-year-old a ride to a hotel and you're going to jail for 100 years. So there's a new thing that's going to be coming. Trafficking is the new war on drugs. And I testified to the Criminal Justice and Safety Committee in New Hampshire in January, and the prosecutor was so proud to announce that they finally had 2 adult victims because the heroin dealer withheld heroin. It's coercion. And I get up there and I go, so if the drug dealer tells me to steal cars and break in houses, am I still going to be a victim? And you might want to check with people in recovery, because allowing an addict to blame other people undermines their recovery. And ain't no one made me smoke crack cocaine. I got to own that shit. But it was insane. So basically then, what are we going to do? Every drug dealer now, instead of going to jail for 10 or 20 years, now you're going to go to jail for 50 or 100 years if you are a prostitute. Their net is becoming wider and wider. Congress now is trying to be able to wiretap all our phones with surveillance without warrants. They want the CDC to study us. So I recently took a 2-day training to be an HIV test counselor. And they said men with men and drug users were higher risk. And I said, well, they're not quartered and tested and they're not going to jail. And then they said sex workers were a high risk, and I looked at these people, I said, you have no documentation that proves that. And quite frankly, I've had 1,685 clients since 2009, and I've never caught an STD because I make sure I use condoms every time, and I'm smart about things. I have no doubt that a lot of sex workers with less empowerment have a lot less ability to negotiate those. We have condom for evidence laws. You could be arrested for carrying condoms. This does not promote public health and safety. But the stigma is rooted so deeply that I recently asked a class of students I was teaching, how old were you when you knew what a prostitute was, and where did you learn this? You don't learn it in church or at school, so how do you know this? And the kids say, we're driving along with their parents late at night. We say, Mama, why is that lady on the street corner? How come you're not going to offer her a ride? And they're told they're bad women. And the boy said, we weren't even old enough to understand what sex was yet, but we had already been taught that these were bad women who deserved what they got. And once we do that to sex workers, it tends to spill off onto everybody else. And now we're seeing the cops raping and robbing ordinary people, and they escalate just violence. So I'm glad we're all here. We are all on the same page that everybody's human rights counts. And thank you all so much for having me.
Are there other things, just one other thing that you can think of that would be helpful to you from people in this room, for people who are in situations like the ones you were in, that we could be doing?
I would say my first thing is building community because, until I became an activist and prior to all this abuse and in and out of jail, I felt like I needed someone's permission to be involved in my local community, and I was pretty sure if I joined the PTA, they weren't going to be nice to me. So when I found my sense of community and knew that I was accepted for who I was and I counted too, it's a lot like getting the letters in jail. And that's why we're trying to create community before the women get out. So they know they're not alone, they do have support, and they find out even if all you can do is give a phone call, because a lot of us have no resources to offer people. But sometimes just hearing a kind voice on the phone that validates your experience, doesn't blame you and acknowledges it, means the world of the difference.
I would say love yourself first. Don't go looking for love in all the wrong places. No matter how beautiful you are, everybody does it. I think that what went wrong with me, I was looking for love and I found it in the wrong place. So I would just say just love yourself first and, I'm sorry, I'm just, but I believe you should love yourself first and don't just go out there randomly looking for it, because you might end up with the wrong person and you don't want that to happen.
I would say I'm gonna step out the box a little bit. We have all of us in here that do the work, the grassroots. And so what I'm gonna say is this: I'm gonna challenge the people in the profession, so your attorneys, you judges, you prosecutors, you the nonprofits that are the dominant race with the funding. I can say for my case, they would not speak out because they were threatened about their funding. So when you see something wrong and you're scared because your money's going to be pulled or you're going to be shamed, I say step outside that box. I mean, I know it's easier said than done, but it was not easy fighting against the state of Florida. But I can say for myself, moving forward with that and having that support has allowed for me to be able to help other people through my case. I've gotten letters about that. So when you're in the communities, attorneys and judges and prosecutors and the women who hold the funding and you know who you are, I say speak up when you see something. Use your privilege to speak up. Stop being silent about it. Stop not addressing the elephant in the room. I have a problem with that. When you have the information, the keys, and the data to be able to help those who can't help themselves, then don't stand back there and sit in your corners and in your tables or in your rooms and be quiet about it. Speak out against it. It's not popular. It sure isn't going to gain you any friends, but it's the right thing to do, because ultimately you'll see that other people will step up as well. I'm also going to challenge, people, specifically men and men of color, to also step up as well. We need you all to speak up. I read an article by a guy named Just. I'm gonna post it soon, and he talks about that from a perspective, because you also need that as well. I find it very, for 2 years I was silenced because I was under house arrest, and they were looking for a chance. They were mad with me. We're looking for an opportunity to make sure that I could get locked back up and violate my probation, which would have gave me 5 years per count, which it could have been a total of 15 years. So I had to be quiet, and so now that I don't have any dealings with the state, I'm not. So I'm going to call some people out. I had attorneys that knew better but didn't do better. You go in that courtroom and you know what your clients have to experience, and you stand back there because you don't want to be blackballed when it's time for you to got to go up for your clients. And I understand that, but at the same time, as you see this thing breaking down, be brave enough to say something. If you see a law that needs to be passed, and some of them do, but I'm challenging more to do more, write the verbiage for it and help the people who don't know the language to do it, So that would be my, my advice. We're in here. This is grassroots. This is people you to the fire. You're on the front line. So the people that are not, why don't you use your voice and your privilege to help? That's what I would say.
Thank you.
I think the first step, the most important thing is exactly what she said, to speak out. Because it's the start, how is common, the domestic violence. Because if we got bite by a dog, we are not ashamed, we are not embarrassed, we are not keep the secret. I think it's the same thing like that. So we can say it. We just can say, hey, I got abused. Because it's not a shame thing. It's just happened. There's a lot of bad people. And second, I want to say the time is really important. I know all of you works really hard and they're really thankful for that. But also, I keep asking myself too, how it can work well. Because when I was in jail, I met many people when I had already second trial. But if I met many people when I had first trial, probably the result was different. I know all of you work hard, I know. So as I said, I want to suggest, let's more think about it, how we can help and right timing. That's, I think, the most important thing.
I agree with Marissa. There was attorneys that I went through that were just ready to cut a deal with the prosecutor. And I'm looking like, I didn't even get to tell my side of the story yet. You want me to cut a deal? And it's just, I have to work with these people, or I see these people every day in the courtroom. But what does that have to do with me? Why should I have to cut a deal for me to give up my rights with my son? And it's just, she's absolutely right. There's people that doesn't speak up or they absolutely don't care. So I think people should, stick together. And also people on the outside too. They were ready, why don't you just take a deal? I have people telling me that all the time, take the 10 years. But I'm like, it's me that got to do the time. It's just, I'm just looking up like, you're going to do that time with me? Because if we're going to do it together then, and it's just like, yeah, I thought you were supposed to, help me. And, she's right. People should stick together, speak up. Don't be behind closed doors saying it. And that's why the petitions and everything, I'm happy for the people that did do it, because we shouldn't stand back in silence. Because the prosecutor's seen the petitions. She mentioned it, even though they didn't care or budge. But I just think speaking out more, especially for women, it would definitely do a lot. And I think it will make more laws for us women, because there's hardly any laws for us. And I think sticking together will bring more laws here in the United States.
But also just really lift up the fact that people held your prosecutor accountable. I think she's no longer
she's
a
no
prosecutor
longer there.
anymore. Right?
My question that I want to propose is, I'm coming from a city where the police department is truly corrupt, along with the judicial system. I'm not only a 13-time rape survivor. I suffer from domestic violence. I also suffer from watching my mom be abused by my father. But the way our police department and judicial system is so corrupt that we, the people, are afraid to go to them and let them know when we have been raped. And one of my rape cases, I was actually told by the police, you deserve to get raped because you shouldn't have been out there selling your body. What do you propose you say to a person who's scared to reach out for help?
I would suggest you probably you have to take it to another level. You have to go get an attorney. Let them know what's going on. You have to go higher up than the police department. Because the same way where I'm from in Connecticut, the police are so corrupt. The police in the police department were sitting there saying how bad of a guy my son's father was. But yeah, I'm still getting prosecuted. They're behind closed doors saying it. Sometimes you have to go higher up, go to a Supreme Court, because it's so corrupted, and not just where you're at, everywhere. So sometimes you have to bring it national. Sometimes even go to the news, because if they're gonna say something like that, you have to go higher up. You can't allow them to say that to you.
Here I am again, finna run my big mouth and say something that probably not gonna be favorable, but this is how I feel. What's really the purpose of the churches in the community then? I mean, can you not go to your church and not get that support? I mean, the sick is on the outside. So, I would challenge, because I've had that come to my inbox. And I'm able to only do so much because I'm not necessarily an attorney. So what I try to do is I try to put these stories out on my social media stuff, and I'll try to pay for that to be boosted, because that corruption is happening all over. It's not just specific to yours, and some of them are worse than others. And I read a book called by Norm, Breaking something.
Stamper, yeah.
Yeah, Norm Stamper. And I just was amazed at, like she said, a lot of police they're double it. They're doing it double. I think the young lady over here mentioned that. But why can't you, with as many churches, especially in our communities that are right next to each other, be able to go in there, not be ashamed, and get the support you need, and then they speak on your behalf. And I'd say to our faith-based communities that you should be helping us with that. You should be able to help us. We should be able to come to the churches and be able to say, this is what we're experiencing, and 7 other women with us, and they say, you know what, we're going to go to the police department, because they may not want to talk to you, but maybe the faith-based community can go in and say, hey, we're representing, our people in our community, and this is what they're experiencing, and you're not helping us. So, again, I don't know how people are going to feel about that, but I truly feel like it shouldn't be a position where people are shamed and guilted into not speaking up, and then you feel, because our experiences with the police are different. Let's just it's different. It's a different experience. So no, the trust is broken. It has been, and it's getting worse. So no, I don't necessarily want to call you as a front line, but I should be able to go to my local community church, you know what I mean? And pray to God the pastor's not doing it. But I'm just saying, and be able to go and have a system of support so that they can go and back you in that. That's just, one of my quick thoughts.
I hate to say this, but can you hear?
Oh, yeah.
We know most rapes aren't reported. And out of the ones that are, conviction rate is 5%. We have 500,000 untested rape kits and evidence lockers. And when you're involved in sex work, I hate to say it, most churches ain't going to be too kind to you and come out now. If they don't know that fact, they might. And I'm not saying they all, there's different things. But actually, my advice is different. Don't call the police, because they're going to rape, rob, or murder you, shoot your dog, and you're going to become another act. They ain't going to help you. But I did find out some things. You can go to the ER. You can get a rape kit without them reporting it to the police. You can still get on the PrEP medication for 28 days. So there's things. You can find local organizations and other sex workers like you to help support you, support victims of trauma. But I hate to tell people, basically, you're taking a risk when you call the police. They might do more violence to you, because we're not the right kind of victim.
Have any of you sought or had access to treatment for post-incarceration syndrome? Does anybody have resources for therapists who do treatment for post-incarceration syndrome? Does anybody know what that is? Like anybody who's been a survivor of incarceration has it. You walk out, you've been in there for a month, and you're going to walk out with some level of post-incarceration syndrome. So the question is that why are we, if you guys have access to or have had access to, could you share that? Because where I'm at, there is zero resources for post-incarceration syndrome recovery. And I think that that's something that's really, really important for us to get back to society as survivors of incarceration.
The prison that I was in, they offer it for people that were on their way home. Since I was acquitted through the courts, I didn't go through that. I just had to basically fend for myself because I walked out the courtroom. There is help out there. I think you just have to use the internet. I know that's the only way to go about it. There's not really too much help with posts because I came out not knowing, like I said, I felt like I was on an outer space. I didn't know what was going on. I felt like I didn't know how to be a mom no more because I was in there so long. Everything was just so different. I went to a psychiatrist and seek help that way. But I know so many women come out and they wonder where to start at. They just basically throw you out on the streets. I know a lot of women that I keep in contact with. They're homeless. They don't know where to go. So it is hard, and there should be more resources out there to go to and look for help. And they shouldn't just let you just go out there and just don't know what you're doing, because society changes every day. So I think it should, be more help out there.
In Rhode Island, they have this idea for the teenagers that are exploited that they're going to go to a yoga class and it solves all their trauma. I believe they do this in New York too. And while I admit that people in prison, even if you're not a victim of violence, you come out with post-traumatic stress, I get that. But when it comes to sex workers again, most mental health professionals are totally unqualified. Not, if you go in there and say, I have anxiety, I'm a cam worker, they tell you it's your job. But if you work for a Fortune 500 company, no one's going to suggest you quit your job. So I think we need more training to train. We need to find a list. We just developed a network called Amora in Rhode Island, and we have a list of mental health professionals on standby for victims of hate crimes, people that are at risk of deportation. But we're actually vetting these lists to make sure they're culturally competent. And I think that starts with the list that you're going to use. If you send a victim to the wrong kind of help, they're more traumatized by that experience, and sometimes they're better off not getting any help at all.
The question is sort of what can we do in movement spaces to make sure we are being supportive of and confronting violence, since we act like that doesn't happen with people who are doing community work. So how do we stay vigilant and make sure we are being truly supportive of survivors in our communities?
What I have found is that, in my experience, depending on who I was dealing with, we didn't know who was doing what. It's kind of siloed. I'd like to see less silos and more working together, and everybody can have their own thing, but essentially, we are all united in the efforts that we're trying to do. And I think what happens is, because you have this organization, it's almost like there's a competition. And so the people that are affected in the violence that's happening, that gets lost in the translation. So I like to be able to support the other, at least from where I'm from. And there's so much good going on, and there's so many people in the movement that is not being recognized. And so we have to form, I think, a way of putting that out there, because media is not going to do it, but we have the internet at our disposal. And so really using that, which is hard for me because I don't really like the whole being out in front thing. So I'm praying about that because I know I have to, because that's my purpose. So then I can just go in a cocoon when I'm not with y'all. But seriously, being in an effort where we're all together and say, hey, this is all the work we're doing, and we're going to go and do this together. And no matter, if you're getting a big piece of it right now as far as attention is concerned, a little piece, but I'm going to support you in that, because we know the bottom line, like you said, is ultimately the movement helping the community, as opposed to I want to shine and I want you to see what I'm doing. And I see a lot of that. It's almost like a competition, and so at some point you just lose focus on what your mission was and what you're supposed to be doing. So maybe something more united in saying, okay, everybody has their event going on this month. Okay, I'm not going to do an event this month, or I'm not going to do something this week, because I'm going to go and be a part of your event. We're going to all support your event. And then, okay, this month we're going to support my event and my not. Okay, we're going to all support your event and what you're doing. We're going to all support it. So it's not, we're all 15 of us doing something within a week together, and then people got to have to split up and say, well, which one I'm going to be a part. No, just know to come be a part of all of us, this movement, so that people in the community are not torn between, well, which one do I go to? We can all go to one and showcase all. I hope I made a little bit of sense.
That's super helpful. I want to thank all of you and encourage everyone to
Thank you, ladies, for sharing your story.